Salam alaikum, everybody. I am reporting live from Jordan. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you last week. The planes, trains, cars, hotels, internet, everything's crazy. So I'm at a new hotel, and inshallah, I'll be seeing you soon. Because we don't have class on Thursday this week, we're only going to have 2 lessons today. Or 2 lessons. Most of the classes, I think one of the classes will have 3, but most of you guys only have 2 lessons, meaning that we are going to be doing one big lesson instead of 2. So this video is going to be a lot longer. If you have not finished any of your previous assignments, do those first. This one is going to be kind of a challenge for the kids that have been keeping up with the assignments. They've been turning everything in and they're ready for something harder. This one's going to be a little bit harder. So the goal, we are going to create something that looks like this. We're going to create kind of an outer space theme. I know this is the second space thing we've done. I think they're just sending people to space. So instead of vacationing in Dubai or wherever, your kids, probably when you're all grown up and have a family, your kids will be vacationing to the moon because they're sending people to space. So we're going to be creating what we call small planets today and the next class as well. So you guys can do this whenever you want, whether you want to do it in class, after school, whatever. But if you haven't finished your other stuff because you have had an iPad or your grandma's been sick or your dog died or you've just plain but haven't really working on anything, do the other assignments first. All right. So the goal, what I want you guys to start with, I want you guys to find what we call a panoramic picture. Panoramic. So you guys can go, let's see if I can find my, something like this. So you can type in panorama or panoramic of your favorite city. And basically a panoramic is when we use our phones, there's usually an option for panoramas or panoramic photos. And it's basically the very long but kind of thin photos. And they make you move real slow with your camera in order to get them. So type in panoramic or panorama of whatever city you want. I'm going to use Kuwait City just because I've already cut out a few of the things. So I'm going to use this image right here. I've already copied it and pasted it in. So we're going to, once we have this, you have a couple different options. What I want you to do when you're looking for the panoramas, I want you to have a skyline up here, and I want you to have some water underneath it. I want to make sure that the buildings are touching on each side. If you don't do that, then your picture is going to turn out kind of weird. So if you can find this exact picture, cool. If not, you want to do Paris or New York or whatever, that's fine. So what I like to do is I'm going to go through and I'm just going to erase, make sure you add it to your new layer first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to just erase the skyline. You can do it however you want. If you want to go through with the eraser tool and come through here, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like if you miss a building, like see you later, man, that's fine as well. Or if you want to use the lasso tool and go through and make it, nice and clean, that's fine. What I would also do is I would use the, let's get out of this. I would use the zoom tool. So again, remember on our right-hand side, usually it shows the shortcuts. What I would do is I would zoom into about 200% or more. If you're going to do the lasso tool, you might be able to get away with the magic wand tool as well. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If we want to get this building, we can, or we could just delete it completely. If let's say we're over here at the Kuwait Tower, it's not even the Kuwait Tower, is it? One of the towers. And let's say we have a little bit of skyline, that's okay as well too. So it doesn't matter if it looks kind of janky, don't stress about that. All right, so I'm going to switch over to another photo. This is my cropped out image. Again, you can see there's still a little bit of skyline, but that's okay. So I'm going to zoom out, go to view, and we're going to zoom to, for me, I'm just going to go to the 50 because I can see it all that way. All right, next, what I want you guys to do is I want you to go to layer. You're going to go to transform. This will allow you to flip it upside down, flip it sideways, whatever you want. what we are going to do is we are going to flip it upside down, 180 degrees. Remember your math class, 180 degrees. It's going to flip it upside down. So now our water is on top, and this place where the sky used to be is on bottom. Next, we're going to be playing with filters. Filters are some of my favorite things in all of Photoshop. There is a ton of filters, and they're all crazy, and they all do different things. So we will try to go through most of them, or at least Mr. Keith's favorites. But you can play around with these. Each one has, a bunch of different types of filters within filters. So we'll go over those later. But for right now, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the distort or distorts. The word distort just means to kind of change and make it look different. Sometimes it's unrecognizable. We want to go down to polar coordinates. The word polar, sometimes we think of polar bears. We think of the polar coordinates of the Earth are the North Pole and the South Pole. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to take this side of the picture and it's going to connect it with this side of the picture. So we'll go to our distort, go to our polar coordinates, and you shouldn't have to change too much. In fact, it looks pretty good to me if you're using this picture. If you guys click OK, I want to zoom in just a little bit. You don't have to do this, but if you'd like, you can use our smudge tool or our clone stamp tool, whatever you like the best. And I'm just going to kind of like make this part go away, kind of make it look a little bit more natural. I'm just going to kind of move that away so we can get rid of that line there. And you can see it's kind of blurred, but that's okay. So let's zoom back out here. And the goal, maybe for day one, is to just get this far. If you can get this far, that's magical. We can keep going. I'm going to keep going. So this is, I want to say this is the end of day one, maybe not, but we'll see here. So this is the end of day one. If you got this far, you can keep going, but don't stress if you haven't. All right. Next, what I want to do is I want you guys, it looks like I got a couple of these. I want you guys to go and I want you to find a picture of outer space. So I just wrote space and stars. Sometimes when you write space, there's all kinds of cool pictures and planets. So we just want stars. We don't want a whole lot other than that. So if you type in space, you get this crazy stuff, and wow, it's beautiful. And if you want to use it, you can, but we don't want to have a whole lot going on our background. So I'm just going to grab something that looks maybe like this. Anyone you want is usually fine with me. So grab this, copy the image, and we're going to add it into our GIMP here. What I do want you guys to do is I want you to add it to a new layer. So when we Control V, remember Control V is our edit and our paste. I want you guys to, or our Command B if you're using a Mac, I want you to add it to a new layer. And we're going to call this one space, and we're going to drag this one down below. So we want the space to be behind the planet. Also, if it's too bright, what I'm going to do, the stars are too bright, I want to just take them down a notch. But I'm also going to add a new layer. Let's just call it the vacuum of space. We're going to put the vacuum of space below the space, and we're just going to paint it completely black. Because if you've ever been to outer space, it's pretty dark. So now we're just going to go back to our space, and this is, maybe we can make this, call these stars so we know the difference. We're going to make this real, almost like quiet. We're going to make it real soft. So the black is the third layer, second layer is your stars, and you can make the stars as bright as you want. The planet is here. All right, next what I want to play around with is we are going to go to filters again, but instead of doing our distort, we're going to go to light and shadow. And for today's lesson, if you're still working on lesson 1, that's cool. But for day 2, essentially what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to mess around with the lights and the shadows. Some of my favorites are the lens flares and the supernovas. So this is how you can create stars of your own. So you're like, yeah, Mr. Keith, I got some in the background. It looks fine. I could just pull something off of Google. Of course, you could probably find a small world on Google right now and turn it in and get 100%. The point of this class isn't that you can just turn stuff in and get points. It's that you can use these skills. Mr. Keith uses these skills all the time, and I'm 32 years old. Getting good at Photoshop was one of the smartest and greatest things I've ever done in high school and in college, and I promise you'll be able to use it later on. So go to your light and shadow. Let's start with our supernova. And what you can do, let's put it here on the vacuum of space, because if you notice the color, the square is the only thing that's colored. So we don't want that because that was just on our planet. Remember, our planet is only this layer right here. So let's either do the vacuum of space or stars. In fact, actually, let's just do a whole new layer. So we'll do new layer, and we'll call it supernova. Cool. And we'll put this, we're going to drag and drop. We're going to put the supernova at the very top here. We'll go back to our filters. I'm going to go to light and shadow, go to our supernova. And what it is basically is what I like to do is I like to mess around with the colors. And you're basically just kind of creating a star. So, a lot of times when we look up at the sun, we think that the sun is like orangish yellow sometimes. I think that's just our atmosphere. I'm pretty sure the sun's just white, but you can make whatever color you want. You can change the position with these numbers right here. I don't like doing it that way. I like just clicking this arrow right here. It's way faster. And then you can click, once you click the arrow here, you can click anywhere on the screen where you want the supernova to go. Now, there's a couple things you guys can do here. It says number of spokes. Spokes, you think of a bicycle. You think of all those little, on your wheels, on your the little metal part of the wheels. All of those little lines, all of those tiny, thin little metal strips, those are called spokes. So you can imagine that each one of these little lines, sometimes you can see these coming through the clouds when you look up at the sky. Maybe not so much in Kuwait, there's not a whole lot of clouds, but when we add the spokes, you'll notice that it gets more and more and more lines. And if we take them away, there'll be less. This isn't a huge deal. You can mess around with the different, amount of spokes. It doesn't make a huge difference. Radius. I mean, a lot of this stuff is your math class. So think about what Mr. Manu taught you, whoever your math teacher is. Radius, the bigger we make it, the bigger the star. Smaller we make it, the smaller the star. So again, the radius is just half of the distance to the center. So we can make it real small and it's just like one of these guys, or we can make it massive, and that's up to you. And then the last thing you can do, the random hue, I kind of like this one, is if the more random you put in here, it basically makes a star that is straight up a rainbow. So the higher random you go, the more colors of the rainbow that are going to pop up here. And you can add as many or as little as you like. I'm just going to keep them one color for myself because I think it looks, not that it's looking natural here, but it's going to look more natural. So let's see if we can go back to the yellow, and then we'll make the radius a little bit smaller. All right, then you guys can add more of those. Eventually, I want you to have, at least maybe 3 to 5 stars. One of the things that I thought was interesting is, for all of you nerds out there, the lens flare does similar things. You can decide where you want to put it, but the lens flare only works if there's already some sort of light there. So the lens flare, it used to be, when I was learning Photoshop, that was like the main thing, but I like using the supernova better. So light and shadow, supernova. When let's say we want to make a black hole, doesn't work. I have no clue why. When you choose the color black, because it's it's a light. You can think about your science lessons. I'm not sure if you guys have learned that, but for this case, if we want to make a black hole, it's possible, but I don't know how. I haven't got that far in my lesson. So if you choose black, it's actually going to show up white. But the number of spokes and all that stuff, the radius, it does have pieces of black in it. The further out you get, you can see with the yellow, it's pretty much all yellow over here. With the black, it's white at the center, but then you get those real distinguished lines here. So if you try to do a black hole like me, it's probably not going to work as well. You can mess around with it and see what you can find. Click on random stuff and see what it does. That's pretty much how you learn Photoshop. Then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to mess around with the shadows. If you want to add a text, that's fine. But I want you to mess around with the shadows. So let's say the only light we have is coming from this direction. You guys might have learned this stuff in art class, maybe not. If the light source is coming from here, the shadow is going to be on this side over here, right? So we're going to go to our filters. We're going to go to light and shadow. And you could probably do either one of these, drop shadow, any three of these. Let's go with long shadow. But make sure that you are on your planet, or if you want to add words like in Star Wars, and the little yellow words come down, you can do that. But we're just going to do it with the planet. But adding shadows, we're going to go to long shadow here. Make sure you're on your right layer here. And you can make the color of your shadow ridiculous colors that don't make any sense. I'm going to go with black just because it makes the most sense to me. Now the angle is important. If we change the angle, you can see the shadows currently here. It's a little bit harder to see, so let's go with red just for now, just so you can see it a little bit better. As you change the angle of the shadow, it moves where the shadow is supposed to be. So if you want to make it look realistic, find your light source. In this case, it's going to be here for me. If you have a bunch of different stars, it might be kind of hard, so don't worry about that. But we want to make sure that it fits something like that. So where the light source here, so blocks it out and it moves that way. So if it's not perfect, that's okay with me. Let's make it black again. And then we want to do something called, we want to go to style. And again, if you're in Photoshop and you're like, none of this stuff makes sense, just mess around with it, see what you can find. I'm going to do fading fixed length. And then the length you can make it huge. And again, it's probably easier to see if it's red. The length, it kind of just blasts out that way. Midpoint, you can mess around with all this stuff. And then fading, with that, if you just do the fading style without the fixed length, it'll just cut it where the image ends, and that doesn't look as realistic. Same thing with the infinite. So with this case, we want a black, and you can see it a lot better if you have a lens flare or a supernova in the same image. So if we click here, we go here, the image, the shadow will show up more if it's in the same image. But that's up to you. So I think we're khalas for now. And if you have something like this, cool, you can add some planets, you can add some spaceships. It's totally up to you. But the goal is I want you to mess around with the shadows. I want you to mess around with the supernovas. If you want to mess around with all the filters, I like these light and shadows here. You can mess around with these, and then also distorting. And we'll go through a bunch of these in the coming weeks, so don't stress. But try to get something that looks like this. If you want to throw in 27 supernovas, it's up to you. But good luck.